Hi, it's Jordan Teen 1, and this is part 1 for my new Loomigurumi tutorial for the pattern of making this sweet little fish, Dory, from Finding Nemo and the new movie Finding Dory. So my family absolutely loved the first movie and we can't wait for the second one to come out. And the one on the right here is the one I'm going to be making in the tutorial, and the one on the left was my prototype. So they're basically made the exact same way. The only difference is the bands I used in the first one were the navy blue and the yellow opaque bands. And then in this tutorial I have the jelly bands. So I'm really thrilled with the way that she turned out. It was a labor of love to really try and get the pattern to look like her. So I think it turned out to be a fairly good likeness, and I hope that everybody else thinks so too. To make the body section of Dory, you're going to need a hook of some sort. So I have the rainbow loom metal hook. You're going to need some kind of stuffing, so I have polyfil for that. And to make my magic ring, I'm going to be using a twist tie. And if you had the Loomiloom, you can use that as well. So both of those things are optional, but I do find them very helpful. And then you're going to need something for stitch markers. So you can use some stitch markers. I got these at my local craft store. Or if you don't have those, you can use some clips. Now for my eyes, I'm using 12mm safety eyes. So these are made by Darris. They're called Animal Eyes. You can see that they're brown and black. So again, you probably can pick those up at your local craft store, or I'm sure you could find them online. If you don't have safety eyes, you could just make the eyes out of rubber bands, just using black and white. So I'll show you about that a little bit later in the tutorial. Now, as far as my rubber bands, I used all Rainbow Loom brand bands. And for the totals, I used 425 of the neon blue, 25 black, 191 navy blue, 24 yellow, and as I said earlier, the navy blue and the yellow are jelly bands. And then I used 34 white for around the eyes. And what you could do is you could buy the glow bands. I actually had used some glow bands by accident with the first one, and when I was working on her one night and I turned off the lights, her eyes were glowing, and it looked pretty cool. So you could definitely opt for glow bands instead of the white. I'm going to begin by making a magic ring of 6, so for that I have 7 blue bands. I have a twist tie that I'm going to use to help me get my magic ring started, so that's optional, but I do find it helpful. If you happen to have the Loomiloom and you want to use that to begin your magic ring, you would use the one that has the 6 fins. I also have a clip that I'm going to use, so you can either use a clip or a stitch marker. So I'm going to take my twist tie, put it right next to my hook. If you don't have a twist tie or a Loomiloom, you can just use your plain hook. You're going to take your first band and triple this. So you just want to twist and loop it back on 2 times. So that'll give you your 3 loops. You're going to just bend this in half. And all the twist tie does is just to hold those 3 loops together. So it's just easier that way. If you don't have that, you would use your fingers and just pinch those 3 loops. So your first band pulls through, back on, one through the other. I'm always working front to back. Pull through the second loop, back on. Now this time you're going to have 3 loops, and one through the other too. Back through from the front. Again, you're having one through the other too. So that's my 4th. Fifth. And here's my last one. Just remove that twist tie. I'm going to add my clip to the band that's on my hook. And I'm just going to take a second to stretch these out. Try and get them evenly spaced around that circle. So if you count your stitches, and a stitch is the little sideways V on the outer edge of your magic ring, you should have 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the last one is always going to be the one on your hook, so in this row it's number 6. In row 2 you're going to need 12 blue bands, and we're doing an increase in every stitch. So we're going under our first stitch. You're always going front to back under both loops. And you're going to pull through your first band, one through the other two, back through that same stitch a second time for your increase. And then we're just going to follow around, doing 2 in each stitch. So where we're starting here is going to be the nose of Dory. And in the next row we're going to start to add some black to start to form the mouth as well. So here's my last stitch where my clip is. I have 2 bands left. I'm going to move that clip, place it on the one that's on my hook, and now we should have doubled our stitch count. So if you counted the stitches around this time, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and number 12 is the one that's on your hook. In row 3 we're going to do 4 single crochet in blue, and then we have 1 increase, 1 in black, 4 more blue singles, and then a blue increase. So we have our 4 blues, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in the next one we have a single, but we're switching to black. So you're going to pull through everything on your hook. Whenever we change colors, you'll have just the 2 black on your hook, one through the other. So that's what's known as a slip stitch. Next one over we have our increase in black. So that's 2 in the same stitch. And then a single black. The next one we have a single. We're doing a slip stitch since we're changing back to blue. We have 3 more singles. And then in the very end stitch where your clip is, we're doing an increase. And where we're doing this increase is actually going to be the top of the head. In row 4 we have 3 blue single crochets, then we have a single black and increase, single, increase, single, and then 4 blues, an increase, and then end on 1. So we have our 3 blues, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then in that 4th stitch we're switching to black, so I'm doing a slip stitch through everything. Now any place that we do a slip stitch on the previous row, you're going to find this little sort of like a half stitch that usually is more vertical than it is horizontal. That's actually just made from doing the slip stitch. It's the other end of this band, the way that it slides down. If you look to the side you can see it a little bit better. And we are ignoring that. That's not a true stitch, so just make sure that you know, because we're going to do a lot of color changes within Dory, that Anytime you had a slip stitch on the previous row, don't get fooled and think that's an actual stitch, because it's not. So we're ignoring that, and we're doing an increase. So we have 2 black, the next one is a single. So we're just widening out this mouth here. We have an increase, and then under the last black stitch I have just 1 single. Again, we did a slip stitch with the blue, so ignore this first part. Go under the actual stitch, do your slip stitch. So we have 4 singles. That was the first of 4. So here's 2, 3, 4. Then we're doing our increase, and if you look, this is going to be the top of the head, so we're going to be doing increases in a row. So if you look at your stitches, you can see that's where we did the previous increase and that previous row. So we have our increase there as well. And then in the last stitch, a single. In row 5 we have 2 blues, 3 blacks, then 2 increases, 3 more blacks, 4 blue, an increase, and 2 blue. So I have 1, and then 2 blue. Next I'm switching to black, so I'll pull through everything. In the next stitch, again, we did a color change in the previous row, so ignore the first. I'm going to remind you at first for the first couple rows, but I'm not going to keep telling you to ignore that first stitch because we're going to do so many. So that was my first single black, second. Now the next 2 get increases. So really we're just trying to widen out this mouth. I actually had a really hard time trying to figure out how I was going to make her mouth. And then I have 3 more singles in black. If you look at pictures of Dory, she basically always has her mouth kind of hanging open. So I did my best to simulate an open mouth without actually having to make a hole. And now again, we had changed color on the previous row. Ignore the first. We're going to do 4 singles, doing a slip stitch here. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4. Now again, if you look here, we did an increase here, an increase here. So we're doing an increase here. So they should always be lining up here for you. And then we have 2 singles. In row 6, our stitch count is going to increase to 23. We're doing 3 increases in this row. And I feel like I'm not going to keep pointing out the pattern every time because I do post it before each segment in written form. Because as Dory grows, the rows are going to get larger and larger. I feel like that's just taking up extra time. So I have a blue to start with. And then a black, so do your slip stitch. Again, ignore this first little part. And you may notice as you're building this, where you've done a lot of slip stitches, once in a while you'll notice a larger than normal gap that might form. For example, I feel like as I'm going under this one, it's a little bit more of a gap. So if you ever do feel like that, what you can do is go through your stitch, but then just grab an extra loop. So that way when you pull through, it's just going to make it tighten up right there. And then I'm switching to blue here, doing that slip stitch. So I have 2 single blues. The next one gets an increase. Now we're down to the bottom of the mouth. I have just a single blue and then another increase. And now I have 2 single blues. The next one I'm switching back to black, doing a slip stitch. Another single black. So now for the rest of the row it's blue. Again, ignore the first little part here. Do your slip stitch. So I have 4 single blues. That'll get us up to the top of the head. Next one gets an increase. And then that should leave us with 3 singles. So what I am going to do now is just sort of form this a little bit. The row where we've been doing our increases, as I said, is the top of the head. So I'm just going to kind of squeeze these sides in and try and get the shape a little bit more formed to how she's going to be. In row 7 you'll need 26 bands. We're doing 3 more increases. So we're starting with 6 singles. So 1, again ignore the first little black, 2, 3, ignore the little blue, 4, 5, whoops, threw the wrong one there, 6. Now to the bottom here, I'm doing 2 increases. Just need to widen out the bottom of Dory just a little bit. It's my second increase. And now I'm going to do 10 singles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, ignore the first black, 5, 6, ignore the first blue, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So now we're at the top of the head. We're doing our increase. And then we have 4 singles to get back to the start. So it should be starting to form and look like the front of a face here. You'll need 29 bands for row 8, and we're doing 3 more increases. So we're starting with 6 singles, and in the very first stitch you may find a little bit more of a gap here. So what I would recommend is to pick up an additional blue loop and just include that, and that way it's going to help from having a larger gap there. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now we're going to do an increase, and then at the very bottom a single, and then another increase. So we're just kind of widening this out just a little bit more here at the bottom. And then we're going to do 11 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's going to take you to the top. We're doing our increase. And then we have 5 singles left. And again, I like to just sort of squeeze this together as I'm forming it, because she does have a very narrow shape. In row 9, you're going to need 32 bands. Again, we're doing 3 more increases. So we have 7 singles to start. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we're doing 2 increases in a row. So that's my first increase, and then right away a second increase. And then we're going to do 13 singles. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Now we're at the top, we're doing an increase, and then that leaves us with 6 singles. In row 10, we're going to do 7 increases, so our stitch count and band count is 39. So we're going to start with 8 single crochets. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then I have just 1 increase. And then I'm going to do 11 singles. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And now I'm going to do 3 increases in a row. This is going to be up around where the eyes are. So there's my first increase. My second increase. And then 1 more. And then I have 3 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then I have 3 increases. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then that leaves me with 3 singles. Again, you may need to do a little bit of reshaping, and if you notice that it's sort of caving in a little bit in spots, don't worry about that, because when we add the stuffing, it's going to fill everything out. In row 11, you're going to need 40 bands. We're doing just 1 increase, and you can see that we are going to start to add some navy blue. So we're going to start with 8 single crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then at the very bottom we're doing our one and only increase. And now we're going to do 12 singles. So that's 1, 2, just slide these over, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So for this next section here, we're going to do just the inner loop. So we had been going under both loops from front to back. This time we're just going under the inner loop, that's the one that's closest to you, and pushing out through the middle. So I have 2 blues. So here's one, the next inner loop, and now I have 4 navy blues. They're all going under just the inner loop. I am going to pull through everything, do that slip stitch since I'm changing color. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now I have 2 of the lighter blue. Now here they're going to go under both loops. So this is at the very top of the head. Do your slip stitch. And the second one again under both loops. And now we're going to start to do our inner loop only pattern again. So just that inside loop, have my navy blue, do my slip stitch, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, so those were all inner, and then we have 2 more in the lighter blue. These are again still just inner loops. And then that should leave us with 4 more bands. Now these are going to go under both loops once again the regular way. And then that's going to take us back to the start. So in the next part I'm going to show you how to make those eyelids. I don't technically know if they're eyelids, but the part above her eyes that stick up. And we're going to work in the outer loop for that. See how it's looking? Now I have 13 bands here. I'm going to do 2 singles and 2 increases above the one eye section, and then in the reverse order 2 increases and 2 singles. And I have this additional band that I'm going to use to tie this off on the inside. So if we start over here from the right hand side, you should be able to tell where we did just the inner loop, and the outer loop, if you push this part down, you should see should stick up a little bit. So if you count here, we did a total of 6. You should have 6 outer loop stitches that are empty. We're going to ignore the first 2, and we're going to go into the next one. You're just going to go under that one loop, and let me just pull these in the reverse order here. I have 1 single, moving over to the next outer loop, have a second single, and then in the next one I'm going to do an increase. So there's 1, 2, and then again outer loop. I have 1 and 2. So let me just grab a clip here, and I'm going to just attach that for this moment. So you can see, if I turn it around here, you can see how it looks. You have your 2 outer loops that we didn't go through, and then you have the section that we build up here. So now we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to be working on the opposite side. So it may feel a little bit awkward because we're going in the opposite direction. We're going around in a clockwise direction. But again, if you push these down a little bit, you should be able to see your outer loops pop right up there. We're going to do the same thing. So we're skipping the first 2. So that's 1, 2. So I'm going into this third outer loop here, doing a single, moving over in that clockwise direction. Again, it may feel kind of awkward. Next one, this time I'm doing an increase. So I have 1, and then back through. And then in the next one over, should be your last outer loop here. You have 1, and then back through for the increase. So here's what it should look like on the front. And what I'm going to do is just take this off, leave it in my fingers. What I need to do is get these 2 loose bands to come down into the middle. So I'm going to reach from the back side into this next opening here, to the next stitch. I'm going to just push out, grab the loop, pull that through to the inside. And then what I'm going to do is the same thing on the other side here. I want to go to the next opening over here. And so from the back, I'm going to leave this on my hook. I'm going to just push out. I'm going to grab this loop. I can take off my clip. And again, pull this loop down to the inside. So on the back side here, I have, actually I'm going through an extra loop there I didn't need to. You should have just 2 loops on your hook. And now what I'm going to do is pick up an additional band just so that can tack on there nice and tight. Take my last band, pull through everything, one through the other, and make a nice and tight slip knot. And if you wanted to, you could grab this loop and pull it underneath some bands. You certainly don't have to because it's going to be on the inside, but you just want to make sure it stays out of the way of doing your next rows of stitches there. And you can play around with the adjustment of the way that these are, but that's how you're going to form this upper part above the eye. In row 12 and for the next few rows we're going to have a stitch count of 40, and we're doing the lighter blue and the navy blue just to make the patterns on Dory. So we're starting with 15 of the lighter blue. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And now we're going to do 3 navy. So don't forget to do your slip stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to do 5 of the lighter blue. Do your slip stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now we're going to start to do the dark blue. We have 4 of those. So I'm going under my stitch, do my slip stitch. That's 1. And don't get slipped up by the slip stitch in the previous row. So that's 2. 3, 4. Now you're going under a navy stitch, but you're going to switch to the light blue. Do your slip stitch. And again, pay attention to your slip stitches in the previous row here. We have our second blue. Do another slip stitch. We're doing 4 navy again, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going under my last navy stitch. I'm going to start the lighter blue. So I have 5 of those. Do my slip stitch. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then you should have 2 stitches left. They're going to be the darker blue. Do your slip stitch. And then here's the last one. So I know there's a lot of color changes. It's going to happen in the next couple rows. We have 40 bands for our 13, so we're just continuing with our light and dark pattern here. I have 1 dark to start, and I'm still on the same color, so no slip stitches. And then I'm going to have 13 of the light blue, so this time I am doing the slip stitch. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So in the next stitch, I'm going under a light blue stitch, but I am going to do a dark navy color here. So do that slip stitch. So that's only going to be one dark, and then I'm going under a dark stitch. I have two of the lighter blue, so do that slip stitch. One, two, going under a navy stitch, and I'm switching to navy, slip stitch. And then I have 5 of the light blue, so I'm going under the light blue stitch, slip stitch, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now I'm going to the navy under that stitch. I have 4 of the navy, so that's 1, doing that slip stitch, 2, 3, 4, and now I'm going to switch to the light blue here. I'm going under a light blue stitch. I have just 1, do the slip stitch, and then I'm going under the light blue stitch. I'm doing 4 navies, so slip stitch, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going under a navy stitch. It's my last navy stitch, and I have 5 of the light blue, doing a slip stitch. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now I'm going under the light blue stitch. I'm switching to darker blue, slip stitch, and that leaves 2 stitches here, and I'm doing the light blue, slip stitch, 1 and 2. So I hope everybody is bearing with me here with all of these color changes. Just be very careful that you're going under the correct stitches when there's slip stitches in the previous rows. Row 14 is our last row with a stitch count of 40. We're starting with 1 dark. It's going under a dark stitch, and we are changing colors, so do your slip stitch. And now you're going to do 12 of the light blue. So again, we have to do another slip stitch right away. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I'm going under a light blue stitch, but I have 1 dark, doing that slip stitch. And now I have a dark stitch I'm going under, And I have 3 light blue here in a row. So do my slip stitch in the first one, and now going under a light blue stitch for my second light blue, another light blue stitch, and now under a dark blue stitch I have 1 dark, doing that slip stitch, and then I have 4 of the light blue going under my next light blue stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Going under a light blue stitch, switching to dark blue, doing that slip stitch. That's my first dark of a row of 10 here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the 6th one is going under a light blue stitch. And now we have 7, 8, 9, and under my last dark stitch I have my last dark. That's number 10. And now I have 4 light blue, doing that slip stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going under my light blue stitch, pulling through a dark band, doing a slip stitch, and now I have 3 stitches left. So the next stitch I'm going under is dark, doing another slip stitch, and then here I have 2 left. So here's my very last one. In row 15, we're going to do 3 decreases, so you need 37 bands. So I'm going under a navy stitch, and I'm pulling through a navy band, so I have to do a slip stitch, and then in the next one I'm going to do 5 single crochets in a light color. So slip stitch, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to do my first decrease. So the way that I've been doing decreases lately that I found to work out much better is that I ignore the first stitch, go into the second stitch. I'm just going in the 2 outer loops. So I'm just going to slide through that outer loop, pull back just slightly so I can see my first outer loop, and then just push straight through there. So if you look on your hook, the bands kind of make an X. And then you're just going to pull that straight through and 1 through the other 2. Now I have 5 more singles in the light blue, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's going under my last light blue stitch from the previous row. So now I have the dark blue, and I'm switching to dark blue, doing a slip stitch. So I only have one there to do. Now I'm moving over to the next stitch. It's the lighter blue. I have 2 light blue bands, so slip stitch with the first one. Here's my second. So now I'm going under the light blue stitch. I'm switching to darker blue. So do a slip stitch. And then under a dark blue, I have one more of that dark blue. Under the next one, I'm going to do 3 of the light blue. Do a slip stitch. That's 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going under a light blue stitch, but I'm switching to the dark, doing a slip stitch. So that's 1, 2, and one more. I'm going to do 3. And again, I'm going to do a decrease in the dark. So I am skipping the first one, going into the second one, only the outer loop. Pull that back, go straight through the first outer loop, and through. And now in the next one over here, I have just one single in the dark, and then right away again I have another decrease. So the next 2 over are going together. Skip the first outer loop, pull back, straight through the first outer loop, and now I have 3 more. Just make sure when you do the decrease, you can see these 2 loops are together, but just make sure that you're going over to your next stitch that's unoccupied. Since it is a little bit stretched there from doing the decrease, just make sure you're going to the next stitch that has the 2 open loops. So I have 3 darks, so that's 1, 2, and 3. That was my last dark stitch that I went under. Now I have the light stitch. I'm going to do 3 of these. Do a slip stitch. That's 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going under my light stitch, but I'm switching to dark. Do a slip stitch. I'm going to do 2 dark, so that's 1. Next one under a dark stitch with a dark band. And now I'm going under a light stitch. I have 2 lights. Do a slip stitch, 1, 2, and then last one here, switching to dark. So it's a slip stitch. So I really hope that everyone is following along okay. So I'm trying to point out which I'm going under, lights and darks and such, to make sure you're going under the right ones that I'm going under. I know it can be a little bit confusing with all of this changes, but you can see here how we're getting that nice curve in the dark. The next thing I'm going to do is to make the eyes. So I am using these 12mm animal eyes. They are brown and black. They are safety eyes. And I bought these at my local craft store. I think I picked them up at AC Moore. And if you didn't have these, what you could do is start with a black center and then just do the white for the outside. So what I'm going to be doing is a magic ring of 5, so I have 6 bands, and then I'm doing an increase in every stitch, so I have 10 additional bands. So I'm going to use my twist tie again, just to help me get the magic ring started. And again, if you didn't have the plastic eyes, you could use Google eyes, or you could start with a black magic ring. So I'm going to triple my first band. And then I have 5 additional bands. I'm just going to pull through one at a time. So there's a lot of different choices you can do for the eyes. I thought these were the closest look to what Dory actually looks like. And I'm sure you can order these off of the internet as well. The ones that I bought are made by Darius, but I'm sure there's different companies that make them. And then you're just going to make sure that this is spread out around the circle. And then I'm doing 2 single crochets into each one of the stitches. And the nice thing about the safety eyes is that the back piece that snaps on fits pretty snugly. So once you have that attached, it's pretty much going to stay on. So here's my last 2. And then I'm going to take 1 additional band, and I'm just going to go through the next stitch, pull through everything, and make a nice and tight slip knot just to tie that off. So then if you want to, you can hide your loop on the inside, or you can also pull it down through your fish once you attach the eyes. So it's really up to you. And then if you do have your plastic eyes, you would just put that right down through the center. Now I'm ready to attach my eyes. So the middle of the nose here is where we did the row where we had 2 stitches and an increase right down the middle. So you want to go, I would say probably about 2 spaces over from the middle. And if you have a safety eye, just stick it through the hole. And you would do the same thing for the other side. So with the safety eyes, all you need to do is take the back piece and just push it down on, and it will hold pretty tightly. Now the only thing that I did find is when I attached this and I made it really tight so it wasn't going to come off, it seems to really push out the white and makes it almost flat around. So if you find that you don't like the look of that, what you can do is, if you want it more puffy and more stuck out like this, what you can do is just take some additional white bands, and then what you could do is just use your hook to go through, grab some of the white loops from the eye, and you can also attach it to the blue part as well. So grab a couple stitches, and then you would use your white bands and just go around the circle here and grab the white in a couple different spots and tack it on that way. So that way it's going to puff out more and not be quite as flat. So it's really just a matter of preference. And then you would do the same thing to the other side. You would go probably about 2 spaces over from the middle, and then you would attach your eye like that. In row 16 we're doing 2 decreases, so the total band count is 35. We're starting with 11 of the light blue. So our first stitch we're going under is dark. We are going to do a slip stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Now we have just one dark. It's going under a light stitch, do a slip stitch. Next is going under a dark stitch. We have 2 light blue. So I'm doing a slip stitch in the first. Next stitch is a light blue, and I have a light blue band. Next stitch is a light blue, but I'm going to start my row of dark blues. So I have 8 right now, so I'm doing a slip stitch. That counts as 1. Next under a dark stitch, 2, under another dark stitch is 3. Now I'm under a light stitch, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm back under dark stitches, 7 and 8. Now I'm going to do 2 decreases in a row. So skip the next stitch for the moment, go in the outer loop, pull back, straight through the first outer loop. It's going to be our first decrease. And then again, skipping the next stitch, going to the next outer loop, pull back, first outer loop, and I have my second decrease. So now I have 8 more dark stitches. So again, just make sure that you're going under the next unoccupied stitch. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell because they're stretched a little bit from doing the decrease. We have 8 more darks. So 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going under a light stitch, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going under a dark stitch for number 7, and another dark stitch for number 8. I have 2 lights, so I'm going under a light stitch with a light band, doing a slip stitch, my second light, and then my last stitch is dark, and my last band is dark, and I'm doing the slip stitch. You'll need 32 bands for row 17, so we have 3 decreases. So we're starting with 4 of the light blue. So I will do a slip stitch to begin. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the next 2 I'm going to do a decrease. So skip the first, grab the 2 outer loops, and then I'm going to do 4 more singles in the light blue. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I'm going under a light blue stitch. I'm going to do with a navy slip stitch. Next I'm going under a navy stitch, and I'm switching to light blue. So another slip stitch, that's 1. The next light blue is 2. And now I'm going to do a bunch of dark. So I have 7 to start with. So I'm going under a light blue stitch, slip stitch with a dark. So that's 1. I'm going under a dark, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I kind of feel like there's a gap in this one, so let me just take that one out. Gonna pick up an additional loop here of the dark blue, just so I can avoid a gap there. So that was number 7. Now the next 2 are going together for a decrease. And then the next one over is a single crochet, still dealing with all the darks, and again a decrease, so the next 2 together. And then I have 7 more singles. Again, it's kind of hard to tell, just make sure you're going under the very next stitch over. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and again I'm feeling like this is a little bit of a gap there, so let me just grab an extra loop, redo that one. That was my 5th. And then I have 6 and 7, and that is under a dark stitch. We have them lining up this time. Now I have 2 light blue, so I'm going under a light blue stitch, do a slip stitch, next light blue under a light blue, and then at the very end dark blue under a dark blue and do the slip stitch. In row 18 you're going to need 30 bands, and we're doing 2 decreases. So I'm starting with 9 of the light blue. I'm going to do a slip stitch to begin. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then in the next navy blue stitch, doing a navy blue band, that's a slip stitch. My next stitch is light blue, and I'm doing a light blue band. Again, another slip stitch. Now I have a light blue stitch, but this time I'm switching to the dark blue. Let me just slide these over. So this starts a total of 7 single crochets. So slip stitch. My next stitch is dark blue. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here in the 7th one, I think I feel a little bit of a gap. Let me see. I think I'll grab an extra loop here. So wherever you feel like you have a gap, you can do that. Yours might not always line up exactly where I feel like I have a gap. And then the next 2 stitches are going to go together, the next 2 sets. So here's my first decrease. Really just trying to narrow the back here. So that's 1, and then again, next 2 after that go together. And then I'm going to do 7 more of the dark. So 1, let me just slide these over. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And now I'm going under a light blue stitch with a light blue band, do a slip stitch, and then my next stitch, going under a light blue, but I'm doing a dark blue band, and then in the last one, again they're opposites, the light blue going through the dark, and it's a slip stitch. In row 19 we're down to 27 bands, so we're doing 3 more decreases. I have 3 light blue, so 1, 2, 3, and then a decrease. Oops, didn't quite keep it on my hook there. And then I have 3 more light blue. Now the next one is a light blue stitch, but I'm changing to dark. Do the slip stitch. And then the next one is a dark blue stitch, doing a light blue. And then next one is a light blue stitch, doing dark. So they're opposite this time. So that was 1 out of 6 of the dark blue. So here's 2. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I'm going to do a decrease. And then right in the center here of the back, we have one single and then a decrease. And then I have 6 more dark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have a light blue stitch with a light blue band, slip stitch. Now a dark blue stitch with a dark blue band. We have them lining up this time. And then finally in the last stitch, it's light blue, doing a slip stitch. And again, if you feel like your work is kind of crinkly from all your slip stitches and all your increases and decreases, don't worry about that, because once we add the stuffing, it's all going to smooth out. You'll need 25 bands for row 20. So we're starting this row with 7 of the light blue. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And now we're going to do 7 of the dark blue. So our first dark is going under a dark stitch. Do your slip stitch. That's 1. Next one goes under a light blue stitch. 2. Now we're back to dark. 3. 4. 5. 6. And 7. Now we have 2 decreases in a row. So here's 1. And here's 2. And now I have 7 more darks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now I'm going under a light blue stitch for my 7th dark, and then I have my dark blue stitch. I have 2 light blue bands left, so slip stitch, and then last one, so we're getting there, really starting to close it off. In row 21 you're going to need 22 bands. We're doing 3 decreases. So we're starting with 1 single blue, and then we have a decrease, and then 3 more with the light blue. So 1, 2, 3. Now we're going under a light blue stitch with a dark blue band. Do a slip stitch. So that's the first of 6. Now I have a dark blue stitch. This is number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we're doing a decrease, and then right in the middle of the back we have a single, and then coming around the other side we have another decrease. And then we're going to do 6 more in the dark blue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then that should leave 2 stitches, and they're both going to be the lighter blue. So slip stitch, and last one. You're going to need 20 bands for row 22. We're doing 2 decreases, and you can see we're starting to add some yellow. So we have 5 of the light blue. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Next one under a dark stitch with a dark band, doing that slip stitch. And now we're going to do 2 yellow. So I do have to do another slip stitch. Here's my second yellow. And now we're going to do 2 of the dark blue. So again, I need to do a slip stitch, I feel like I'm having a harder time to keep this under the camera. Now the next 2 stitches go together for our first decrease. We're going to do 2 in a row. So that's 1. This next one sort of over on the opposite side now. And then we're going to do 2 more darks. And then we have 2 yellow, so slip stitch, second yellow, and then we have 1 more dark, so another slip stitch, and then the last 3 here are the light blue. So I have a dark blue stitch, whoops, jumped right on there. That's 1, 2, And my last one. Now before I decrease this anymore, I'm going to add some stuffing. I don't want the hole to get too small that I feel like I can't work this in here. So I like to do smaller sections at a time. It's a pretty large area to fill here. So first you're going to work it up into the nose. Now I'm not going to overfill my nose because I want her to have that ridge down the middle. A nice separation. I don't want it to puff out too far. And I'm going to make sure I get it up behind the eyes. And you don't want to overfill it so there's too much stuffing showing in between the stitches, but you definitely want to get it nice and full, just so there's no ripples. Ooh, there is a loud thunder. I don't know if you could hear that. Yikes. I think my camera work is going to have to finish up here for tonight. So you can play around with it and see what you think as far as where you need to add your stuffing, and you will still have a chance to add a little bit more before we close it off. In row 23, you're going to need 17 bands, and we're doing 3 decreases. So we're starting off with a decrease, and it's going to be the light blue. And then I have 2 more of the light blue. Now that I have my stuffing added, I'm going to try and be careful not to get it caught in my stitches. Now I'm going under a light blue stitch, but I'm switching to the dark blue. And then my next stitch is dark blue, and I have 3 yellows. So slip stitch with the first, and then I have 2 more here. And then I'm doing a decrease. It's going to be with the dark blue. Whoops, almost forgot to do my slip stitch there. And then I have a single right in the middle. And then an additional decrease. Again, I'm using the dark blue. And then I'm going under a dark blue stitch, switching to yellow, and then I have 2 more yellow, now I'm going under the dark blue stitch with a dark blue band, do the slip stitch, and then that is going to leave me with 3 stitches. So they're all going to be the light blue. So slip stitch, and then 2 singles. You'll need 15 bands for row 24. We're doing 2 decreases. So I'm starting with 2 light blue singles. And then under a light blue stitch, I have a dark, do my slip stitch. And now I'm going under a dark stitch with a yellow band. We're going to do 3 yellows, so that was 1, 2, 3. Now my last yellow stitch here, I'm starting a dark blue, so slip stitch. And then the next 2 are going to go together for a decrease. Again, it's going to be dark blue. And then I have 1 more dark under a dark stitch. And I'm going to do 3 yellows. So this time they're going to line up. So slip stitch. And then 2 more. Now under a dark blue stitch with a dark blue band, slip stitch, and then I have 1 light blue, another slip stitch, and then finally the last 2 are going to go together for a decrease. In row 25, you're going to need a total of 13 bands, and we're doing 2 decreases. So we're starting with a decrease, and they're going under light blue stitches, but it's going to be a dark band. Do that slip stitch. And then my next stitch is dark blue. I have a dark blue band. And now I have yellow. I'm going to do 4 of those in a row. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one is going under a dark blue stitch. And now I'm to the middle. I have 1 dark. Coming back around the other side, I have 4 yellow. So the first one is going under a dark stitch. Do that slip stitch. And then the other 3 should line up with yellow stitches. This is actually our last row before we start to form the tail here. Now I have a dark. And then there should be 2 stitches left here. So I'm going to do a decrease, and that's going to get a dark blue. This is the end of part 1, so I'm going to add the links for you to go on to part 2 to finish making the fins and complete your dory. So I hope that everyone is really loving the way that your dories are turning out. You can always leave me comments on YouTube and Facebook. You can post pictures of your creations to my Facebook page, and please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, so that way you can stay updated when I have new tutorials available. You can also find me on Pinterest and Instagram, so please feel free to post your pictures and comments there too. I really love to see what everyone's doing and thinking, and you can subscribe to those as well. Thanks for watching!